disappeared children, I was really just Nelson. I grew up in Boston with my brother Derek and my parents Tom and Margaret. We went to Red Sox games and summer camp, pretty typical American life. And then one day we got a phone call out of the blue, which changed our lives forever. There's a man by the name of Robert Kirshner who worked for Physicians for the Human Rights, and he told us this incredible story, which is what I want to share with you today. He told us that my parents had been revolutionaries in the Civil War in El Salvador, that my father had been a bodyguard to one of the prominent members in his party, and that my mother had done logistics. So she was responsible for getting people in and out of the country and supplies. Shortly after I was born, my mother's picture appeared in the newspapers in El Salvador as a wanted criminal. So we had to leave. My grandmother had taken my brother and sister to Costa Rica to get away. And my father had been shot an inch away from his heart, and he was recovering in Cuba. So we, with the help of aunts and uncles, we fled to Honduras, where her commanding officer had asked her to go on another mission. So it was her and 11 other people, and they kidnapped a prominent businessman. And this is the way that they funded the operation. So they pulled him in what's a safe house. So it was just a normal house on the street, except that it had a secret compartment in the basement where they kept the prisoner, and padded room, air ventilation. They were trying to get their money, and that's how they would fund guns or supplies or whatever. And so my mother and these 11 other people, they kidnapped a very prominent businessman in Honduras. And this prompted the Honduran government to infiltrate the group, and they stormed the safe house. My mother was able to get away to, she was able to make one final phone call to my grandmother, and she simply said, "Take care of the children." We don't know exactly what happened after that, but she didn't make it up. So the police, not knowing what to do with me, they didn't know if I was kidnapped to make it look like a family, or if I had been the son of the people they had just killed. They put me in an orphanage, stayed there for a year, and then I was adopted to my family in Boston. So after the war, my grandmother goes back to El Salvador, and she sort of makes it her life's goal to fulfill her daughter's wish and try and find her missing grandson. So she goes back to the people that she knew my parents worked with, and she asked them about me and about her daughter, and they all said the same thing. "You're asking very dangerous questions. You should forget about them. They're probably dead." And being the unbelievably determined and strong-willed woman that she was, she wouldn't give up. She wouldn't give up when people turned her away, when they slammed doors in her face. And she found an organization that helped her by the name of Probúsqueda. And they did 4 years of research, and using my only baby picture, they tracked us down to the U.S. and they found our home phone number by doing an internet search, which this was 1997, so there was no Google, so this was pretty remarkable at the time. So that Christmas, December of 1997, we go down and meet my birth family for the first time. And I remember walking out, and I was greeted by 30 or 40 of my relatives. And it was one of the most overwhelming things I've ever experienced, if not the most overwhelming. So here we are, 12 years later, and I go down there, they come up here, and we've really become one big family. We trade Christmas cards and Skype calls. And I couldn't have asked for a better sort of ending from this, but as I said, there are many other children who haven't had the same ending that I have. Many children who have stories that are in some ways even more difficult to live with than mine. And so what I decided to do earlier in this year was to tell my story online and to try and find ways to talk about the disappeared children of El Salvador and everything that we've been with. So we've had this website up for a while, and at the beginning of the year I started the story out there. And an old friend of mine, someone that I knew from a long time ago, happened to pick up on it, and he liked it so much. And that is someone by the name of John Younger, who's here today. And he was my camp counselor 20 years ago at summer camp. And this is really cool. We reconnected on Facebook. And it's awesome to be working with someone from your past like that. And he liked what I was trying to do so much that he wanted to help any way that he could. So we got together and we decided we're going to make a documentary film as I try and tell these stories. And so from the very beginning, we really wanted to do something different that uses all these social tools. So we decided that we were going to broadcast as many of the interviews as we can, so people like you can come and ask questions. We're going to try and build some sort of community site where we are sort of giving behind-the-scenes access to, I don't know yet, but like interview lists and interview questions so you can interact and be a part of it. And then lastly, we're on Kickstarter, which is a site that allows people to crowdsource fundraising. So we're trying to get $15,000 so that we can film more of these interviews and tell these really important stories. And so we're looking for 500 people who believe in us and believe in the importance of